data streaming has actually become sort of the centerpiece of the architecture that we've built. Our business is not managing Kafka. Our business should be focused on providing value to our clients. The stream becomes the API, right? That is where the definition is. That's where the contract is the data stream. Because of that, we can move much more quickly with a very small team. And I don't think we would be able to do that if we had never adopted event-driven architecture in Confluent.
That's Brady Perry, co-founder and CTO at Busie. And this is Life is But a Stream, the web show for tech leaders who need real-time insights. Today, we're talking about how a small team is modernizing the group travel industry with an event-driven approach. Busie set out to build a marketplace and ended up having to build the market itself. Now they're becoming the centerpiece of group travel booking. We'll dig into how real-time data and streaming let them move fast, stay lean, and focus on customer value, and how the Confluent for Startups program helps support that journey. I'm Joseph Moniz, your host and technical champion at Confluent. Let's get started. So thanks for coming on the show today, Brady. Let's jump right into it. Tell me about Busie and what do you and your team do, and what does Busie do in general?
Yeah. So I think in a word, the best way to describe Busie is, or in a phrase, we are building the operating system for group mobility. So what that means is we're building ecommerce software, operations software, accounting software to help small and medium-sized businesses that run transportation operations specifically for groups of people. So businesses, weddings, church groups. Major problem around the world is that there is no software facing these bus companies, and but they're transporting millions and millions of people a year. So what we decided to build was something that could help alleviate a lot of the pain points that are facing these companies today.
So I live in Scottsdale, and we get a lot of bachelor party buses.
Yeah.
I imagine that would be one of your customers.
Perfect use case. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so it's funny you mentioned that. My co-founder and I actually discovered this problem on the customer side of things. We were looking to book transportation for a student organization of 150 people when you included guests. And we were in college. We had to fax a signed contract to this bus company, and we had to go and hand them a check physically. I don't even know where we found the fax machine, if I'm being honest. Like,
That's amazing.
I think we had to go off campus to be able to do this. So we were really confused by that, and just didn't understand why we could order groceries to our front doorstep and have them delivered, but we had to go and fax a document. So what we thought would make sense was kind of like a kayak.com for group travel. But what we learned was in order for something like kayak.com to exist, there needs to be digital inventory and there needs to be digital pricing. And this industry doesn't have that. And so we sort of flipped that on its head and decided, let's go actually build the infrastructure that can power something like a group marketplace. So, yeah.
That's interesting. So my follow-up question was going to be, who are your customers? But obviously we kind of sussed that out in the first question. So I think what I'd like to peel the layer back is, so I imagine there has to be some regional operator that could be your customer that has built something like this. But where the need was, or the missing element in the market, is there was no easy software for some smaller entity to just kind of onboard and say, hey, now I have that digital inventory, I have this web presence, and people can book through a much more modern interface. Is that what you were looking for? And do those like kind of one-off systems do exist for specific transportation carriers?
Yeah, so there are definitely some, we would call them legacy software systems in the industry. They're functionally offline. And what often happens is misquoting. Trips just kind of get lost, and then the driver may never show up for their job, or the vehicle just never shows up to pick up the group. This happens all the time. But yes, those one-off systems do exist. Some bigger companies will create their own, but then what happens is it's really hard for them to maintain that. They're not tech teams. They're bus operators or they're transportation providers. So it becomes too big of an investment, and we're actually seeing a lot of companies today switching off of their in-house built system and coming on board to Busie because of the enhanced interface, but also the connectivity to their other systems, right? Like We help them to create more efficient routing for their vehicles. That's something that these other systems didn't do. If they were connected to Google Maps, and Google Maps doesn't actually account for the vehicle size when routing. So what we've actually created a routing system that takes the vehicle size into account, takes the commercial aspect of the vehicle into account, and avoids roads that commercial vehicles can't go on.
All right, so I really want to get more of those details into what you build in our next segment, but
Yeah.
just to kind of put a bow on it, you really have kind of two buckets of customers. You have customers that aren't running any system at all, and I imagine that is a large number of those smaller enterprises that have been doing these things for years before IT was even like a big deal. And then you have these other customers, maybe larger, have these legacy systems that they may or may not maintain in-house. I imagine a large portion of them probably contracted or used a consulting firm, stood the thing up, left them with some run book, and that was years ago. And then and those are the customers that already have something, but what Busie has is I imagine light years ahead, better to onboard, and has those integration pieces as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are constantly iterating on our product from our customers' feedback. And then just from an onboarding perspective, we can get somebody up and running and comfortable within the system within a single 45-minute meeting, and they're off to the races. So very stark contrast from the systems that exist today, where you're looking at months to even a year long of an implementation process, where they're handholding the entire step of the way. They're installing the software system on-prem, right? That's something that this industry still is dealing with very regularly. So cloud software, while it was the new thing maybe 15 years ago in the real world, in the bus industry, this is still like new tech. So
right, they're still figuring out the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's awesome. I can't wait. We're about to transition to our next segment, and we'll start to go through all those other details and how they relate to event-driven architecture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we set the stage. Let's dive deeper into the heart of your data streaming journey in our first segment. So what have you built or currently building with data streaming?
Yeah, great question. So my team is in charge of everything product and engineering related. We're a very small team, 3 people today. And data streaming has actually become sort of the centerpiece of the architecture that we've built. So really, it's just connecting all of our systems together with that nice real-time stream of data, so that whenever we add something new, we can tap into that stream, get all of the events that had occurred, build some rich functionality on top of that, and it's super simple for a small team to be able to actually get up and running with that. So highlight the point that this really is the central piece of our architecture. Where, without it, I don't think we would have been able to build the products that we built today. Just a really quick example, we do almost have that sort of B2C facing capability, but it's more white labeled. So you wouldn't know that you're using Busie under the hood. But one of the things that we provide to our customers, and when I say e-commerce, this is kind of what I mean. We actually can embed like rich forms into our customers' websites that capture data, and in real time transfer that data to a backend system that our customers are using to manage their sales process and manage their operations, but also allows the customer to get a price in real time on the front end. That's something that just doesn't exist today. But you as a traveler, as somebody who's looking to buy something online, you expect to know what the price is going to be as soon as possible. Otherwise, you might go somewhere else. So we're enabling that through event streaming and through just the system that we've built. And then just in taking that a little bit, or I guess another step further, we also power group bookings for Trailways.com. Trailways is a network of independently owned bus operators. They kind of function like a co-op. But Busie powers sort of like the network level or global level of group transportation. So if you go to Trailways.com, you request a quote, we're in real time routing that to the most appropriate operator to service that trip, providing pricing based on their pricing. And then from there, that company can manage the sales process. So sort of maybe like the baby steps of a marketplace, right?
That's really cool, actually. And I start thinking through that. And, you have these companies, right? I mean, plenty of bus companies have been around 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they have probably rudimentary websites with very little functionality. It sounds like and previously, maybe at best, they had like an email form. They would submit the number of people they wanted, the dates, they'd wait for an email. And it is crazy to think that we're on the precipice of 2026 and things are still operating that way. But it sounds like you have this ability to embed your rich forms into that legacy website, and now suddenly you have this real time quote ability. When you actually submit and book something, it's actually booking it in their CRM system or whatever equivalent they have. So even with a legacy system or a legacy website, they can start to get this newfangled functionality pretty quickly out of box. It sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. That I think that's one of the benefits to what we provide is you don't need a brand new website. Now we do offer, website services where we will come in and give you a new website and it'll be sleek and it'll be SEO optimized and all that great stuff. But that's sort of like a different product line that is maybe a little bit less interesting, but huge for these customers, right? Like they want these modern websites. And we came up against that a lot was, I'd really love to use your product, but I would need to update my website first. So finally we were just like, all right,
Let's
we're just
update
going to
websites.
give you a new website.
That's very smart. I mean, you're taking the market as it comes. You started in this whole marketplace idea. You realize that the underlying systems for these providers would never going to work in that paradigm. Let's build that. And then as you having these conversations with customers, you realize, oh wait, they also need their website updated. That's a no-brainer for us to kind of throw that in there to unblock our core tenet of providing this type of technologies. Very cool that you're kind of piecemealing it and figuring out exactly what these providers need.
Yeah, thank you.
So what were the underlying data or technology the challenges that led you to adopt data streaming? I know you guys adopted or decided on event-driven architecture early. I'm very curious about how you came to that decision.
Yeah. So what it came down to was our system was just getting too complex for request response driven communication between our services. So what we really wanted was real-time access to data and real-time data flow so that our systems could be actually like more loosely coupled between one another. And now all they're relying on is a schema at the end of the day, right? And the Kafka API. But, setting up a consumer and ensuring that it follows a specific schema is much better than having, or much easier to deal with than having those request response RESTful API requests where if system B is down, then system A might not be able to do its job, right? And that's sort of what we wanted to avoid so that we could have essentially an always up system, especially for mission critical pieces of that system.
So it's the classic decoupling, scenario. I mean, that's the bread and butter use case for data streaming, of course. That's always the one I think everyone should start with. That's what it was built for initially. And then everything else is just, I think, gravy on top of that when you start thinking, and we'll get more into this in the next segment, when you start thinking about stream processing, when you start thinking about integrations to other disparate systems. But definitely the decoupling is the right way to start. Now, I'm going to use your words. Walk me through how you envision data streaming becoming Busie's central nervous system and delivering this cohesive fabric for your customers.
So I think it's been a couple years, so I don't remember exactly what happened, but I want to say we were looking into building some, like a real-time alert system, right, based on events that were happening within the system, and we kind of realized, especially with sort of this microservices architecture that we had started to build, that was going to be kind of difficult to do, and so in order to have those real-time alerts driven by real-time events, we identified Kafka being the tool or the technology that would allow that type of thing or allow us to build that type of functionality into our platform. So I don't remember where I first noticed it, but just kind of digging in deep to documentation on building these types of systems, it seemed like I kept seeing this Kafka thing over and over again. And I didn't really have I didn't have any experience with Kafka before that. But learning more about it, it seemed like it was really the right technology to be able to accomplish this type of functionality. I think part of it is also because of um, the persistence of the events, right? When you're dealing with like message queues, right? As soon as the message is consumed, it's gone, right? Whereas with Kafka, we can set up infinite retention. And that's something that I think is really powerful because, like I said earlier, now we can stand up a new system that is maybe doing some analytics on all of the quotes that have ever occurred within the Busie system, right?
Yes.
That's something that actually was almost a more recent use case. We built in an embedded business intelligence product into our product where we wanted to provide analytics to our customers on the data that we had been capturing for them for years. Right, that's something that hadn't existed. It's something that definitely doesn't exist in the industry, and we were able to tap into those streams of quotes or trip requests or whatever it is, customers, and actually create some powerful dashboards around that. And all of that was possible because of the way that Kafka works and that infinite retention that I was talking about with our topics. So I guess that's sort of answers part two of your question of how we started to
Yeah.
realize that it was that central nervous system was once we, after that initial use case, once we started realizing that we could leverage this to build new functionality and sort of it just inherently becomes the centerpiece of the architecture because all of these sort of leaves of your platform are connected to the event broker.
Right.
And
The persistence piece has always been the most fascinating, I think, aspect of Kafka, and I've been running it since open source since 2017, and I've always been impressed by the creativity. So, obviously, the biggest reason for persistence is asynchronous microservices, right? Not everything consumes at the same pace, and in the world of event-driven architecture, you have a lot of fan out. For every one event created, it's usually consumed at least 3 times. So that was the classic implementation of it, right, or the necessity for it. But I've heard so many different answers of how people use persistence. There's highly regulated industries and they keep infinite retention on because of auditability, right? Like they can have their auditors come in and just replay the topics for the last 7 years and say, look, we're good. That's a big boon. But my favorite is the fact that persistence can breed innovation, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I have this new idea. I don't have to go pull all of my data out of cold storage. I don't have to hook this thing up to a bunch of databases. I don't have to run this bunch of synthetic data. I can just tell it to start at the beginning of the topic. And, analytics is a no-brainer, but also in this world of AI, training data.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that you could have a business of training ML models just going back into people's like old Kafka topics
Yeah.
from any given vertical. I am not audacious enough to start that business though. All
No,
right,
it's super interesting though. But yeah, you make a great point. Like I think there are many answers to that question, but I think that how we started to realize that it was sort of like a central nervous system for us was as we looked to build out new capabilities, and we started to realize. I think it was the stream lineage feature in Confluent Cloud. I know we're going to talk more about Confluent Cloud in a minute, but I just looked at that one day and I was like, wow, this has gotten massive. Like we have so many different streams of data now, all connected to various systems, and it's super interesting. So maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but just thought
no, it's good. It's good. Let's tease the audience. I love that response. And yes, we will dive into that quite a bit in our next segment. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
Your data shouldn't be a problem to manage. It should be your superpower. The Confluent data streaming platform transforms organizations with trustworthy, real-time data that seamlessly spans your entire environment and powers innovation across every use case. Create smarter, deploy faster, and maximize efficiency with a true data streaming platform from the pioneers in data streaming.
Now we'll go beyond the stream on why Confluent is the right fit or was the right fit for Busie. So, all right. So I know that, during your initial proof of concept, your MVP, everything was point to point and was RESTful. You realized that things needed to be decoupled. So you knew that data streaming was the answer. But there's a lot to wrangle with Kafka. What made Busie choose to work with Confluent as their data streaming platform?
I think it was two things. One, exactly what you just said. It's a lot to wrangle. And I think I recognized that up front, right? Like there's no way. I was a team of one at that point. I mean, I had my co-founder, but he was not on the technical side of the business. And, we wanted to build this functionality into the system, and managing Kafka seemed like something that was going to be out of scope for sure. So I think that was sort of one of the impeti, whatever the word is. But
I hope it's empathy.
but the second part was maybe this. I'm sure this is by design. Confluent was actually probably my intro into Kafka. The documentation was just so prevalent in anything that I was trying to research as it pertains to Kafka. So it kind of was like, here's the things that you need to do, but like, don't do that. Just use Confluent, and then you can leverage this technology, and you don't have to worry about all of these more painstaking processes that are sort of involved in managing open source Kafka. So I would say that those are kind of like the two things.
Okay, well, see, that perfectly relates into my next question. So how did you and your partner choose to embrace a fully managed platform at the earliest stages of building Busie? I know a lot of people, when they, get off the ground at the onset, they're like, let's just run everything. I know that's like the world I came from in the startup that I was in. They're like, we're not buying anything. We'll spin up an instance and we'll run it. But there's a lot of cost to that. And I know I ran through it, and guess what? The startup didn't take off. It's no longer a thing anymore. So I'm curious, what made your team at Busie different that you adopted fully managed services so early?
Yeah. So I'd say we are more on the opposite side of that mentality. We are on the buy versus build side of things. The way we see it is our business is not managing Kafka. Our business is not managing databases or EC2 instances, right? Our business should be focused on providing value to our clients, not those other things. And so we need to focus on creating streamlined communication between dispatchers and drivers, right? And we can do that with Kafka, but we shouldn't be worried about managing Kafka and Zookeeper, right? So that's kind of where that thought process comes from. Maybe this is naive, but I don't think any company that isn't in the business of managing Kafka should be managing their own Kafka. Like, that's just how I feel about it. Focus on delivering value to your clients. So that's kind of the main point. But then also, we've gotten so much support from the community, but also from Confluent directly. The Confluent for Startups program has been amazing in getting us access to subject matter experts. They provide credits, but I think that's that's great. But the kind of the first part of it is the most valuable, where I can talk to experienced solutions engineers or even like field CTOs I've had a few conversations with that have sort of pointed me in the right direction when it comes to leveraging some of the newer features that Confluent is releasing, like streaming agents and that type of stuff. So getting access to those things has also been a major reason why the partnership with Confluent has turned out to be a no-brainer. Like, it's not something that we're going to move away from anytime soon, and very happy that we decided to go this direction to begin with.
Well, I think you have a very smart mentality, because if the intention is to, eventually say, hey, we're going to just run this for now, and then we know we're going to outgrow it, and then we'll move later, you then have to pay the pain twice. Right, because you're learning these ops tasks that you may never use in the future when you get to scale, and then you got to migrate, which is a pain in the butt too. So I mean, I am biased. Like, I work for Confluent for almost 6 years now. I ran open source Kafka, and I could still hear PagerDuty going off. So I'm a little frazzled. So I definitely believe, especially, what you said was key. If you can find a company that you can trust to run the thing, right? And the thing, it's different things. There's many good companies that are good at running things. And you can trust them, and the total cost of ownership, the value prop is there. I agree. 9 out of 10 times you should be letting that company run it, because that's how things scale, especially in the cloud world. You get really good at building one thing, and like, we're never going to help companies, coordinate their transportation. That's not what we're good at. We're good at data streaming. You guys do that, and let us handle the data streaming. I think it's a really It's a fantastic relationship.
Right.
Now
You
you
wouldn't have
mentioned
your
the,
plumber write software for you. Like it's that.
exactly. It's funny. I use that analogy sometimes because people are like, "Well, what do you do?" Because now I have it. My role is a lot different than it was 5 years ago when I was on pager duty, and I used to tell people I was a plumber, and I used to turn the wrench, but now I get to talk about the wrenches. So
Yeah, there you go.
very
That's
very
cool.
apt.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the startup program here at Confluent, and if I recall correctly, last year you were one of the Confluent Startup Challenge runner-ups. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they flew us out to London. I got to speak at Kafka Summit London in front of apparently a couple thousand people. I don't know. It was really, the crowd was really dark, but I know I was really nervous.
I heard you did great, so don't worry about it.
Thanks.
So okay, so I'm glad that I really want the audience to know that we're not using the word partnership loosely. Like there's a real partnership here. There's credits, there's investments from Confluent to see Busie succeed, and I'm glad you've been able to take advantage of those and see your company grow. Now I'm curious with the partnership. How did your teams tackle positioning Confluent Cloud for your customer base? Now, I realize that that may be completely transparent to your customer base. So if it was transparent, I'm more interested in, were there obvious feature enhancements that came for your customers once you adopted event-driven architecture?
Yeah, I think so. It is very transparent. Like our unless our customers are paying attention to any blog posts that we've been mentioned in alongside Confluent or anything like that,
They have no idea. Right.
they would have no idea necessarily like the underlying architecture of our system. But what it has provided is our ability to be nimble and very agile when it comes to adding new functionality. And that's because we don't have to go into like a monolithic system and figure out how to retrofit this new feature into some like very old backend, right? We can just actually start fresh, build a new system, a new API that's completely standalone. Maybe it connects to a different database that's more purpose built for what we're actually trying to deliver in this case. So because of that, we can move much more quickly with a very small team. And I don't think we would be able to do that if we had never adopted event-driven architecture and Confluent. The alternative would be, like I said, kind of dealing with that monolithic system where it's built in a programming language that maybe only one person on the team knows how to write. Now we can hire somebody who, everything that we have is on Node and JavaScript. But if we want to hire a Java developer, they can come on board and start contributing right away because they're going to be building something fresh that doesn't need to be retrofit into an old system. It can just tap into the streams of data and, or write to the streams of data and do the thing that it needs to do.
I know this, but I've never really thought about it that way, in that you could, because you've decided to decouple your architecture, you could have 10 different microservices running 10 different types of code underneath the hood. And it doesn't matter because the common exchange is Kafka, right? You're going to write an event to a topic, you're going to consume it from a topic. I don't care what libraries you're using in that service. And even though I knew that, I never thought of it as a benefit to a startup or really any type of IT organization for what you just said. Like, hey, we have this brand new functionality. We know it's going to run better in Rust, or we know we have a guy that's done this before. He's going to crush it, but he doesn't do JavaScript or Node. He's all about Go. Well, we're going to let him build that in Go because it doesn't matter, because he's just going to produce an event from our data streaming platform, and we don't care either way. We just want the event to be good and consumed and do what we expect it to do. That's really good. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. So an example of this that's maybe a little bit more concrete that happened more recently. Originally, how we had built notifications was sort of each domain was sort of focused on sending the notifications specific to that domain. So if there was a quote, something happened in the quotes and bookings world, maybe there was notification infrastructure built into that service that could send the notification. Maybe it's an email notification or whatever. But we decided that was going to get really cumbersome as we started to add more functionality. So we decided to centralize the notification system. Now there's one system that delivers notifications based on the event stream, the data that comes from whatever event stream. And that was built in Go, which was something we had never built in Go before, right? Just because we didn't have someone on the team that was really most comfortable in Go, and now we do. And they're like, it would be great if I could build this in Go. Okay, go for it. No pun intended.
That pun should have been intended.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So all the goodness. What was the final impact of your customers adopting your platform as their central nervous system in the same way you've adopted Confluent's data stream platform as your central nervous system?
The final outcome, I would say the final outcome hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
But
Okay.
no, but you know, obviously big aspirations for the future of the company, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, I think our customers are pretty happy with our ability to build new things, new cool things that they want, and fit those into an existing platform pretty seamlessly. Because at the end of the day, the stream becomes the API, right? Like it's that is the where the definition is. That's where the contract is the data stream. And so because we can leverage that, we can move more quickly. Our customers are much more happy because they wanted some report that they were never able to get before, and we didn't build for it immediately, but they said, hey, it'd be really great if we could see data in this way. And so we can go and do that because we have the data, and all we need to do is tap into that data stream and construct the report as an example. But yeah,
honestly, that's
that question.
The ultimate benefit
Yeah.
of a startup is, or, I mean, not that any startup can embrace it, but you guys clearly are, is that you can, especially because of the architecture you started with, you can now listen to customer feedback and realistically implement it, right? Whereas if you would have started with a monolith batch-based system, it wouldn't have been impossible, but it would be an order of magnitude more difficult, and it would have taken longer, and you wouldn't have been able to see those happy faces when suddenly what was impossible or unknown or just a curiosity becomes an actual piece of functionality. So could you share some advice and lessons learned for leaders like yourself for tackling data streaming, and maybe specifically through the lens of an early stage startup?
Yeah. I think the advice that I kind of go back to is don't be afraid to ask for help. I
like that.
I'm definitely the type of person who will sometimes feel like if I'm asking for too much, I'm bugging somebody. But definitely what I've learned from working with the Confluent team, especially, is that they are always open to feedback, and they're always excited to help you. They will dive in deep with you to help understand your challenges and what you're trying to build. And there's an accountability aspect where I meet with my account team pretty regularly, and they're like, "How's this project going?" And where can we help? Like that. Lean into that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is probably first and foremost, because as a young company, you're going to be a small team, most likely, unless you're lucky or unlucky. But you're going to be a small team, and
Right.
You're going to need all the help you can get. I guess that's kind of the biggest point of advice I would give.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm actually really glad to hear that, because I've experienced that here at Confluent. I've even experienced that to some smaller degree as a potential customer of Confluent before joining here, and it always warms my heart to hear that, because I truly believe it. Plus, what other company has that much experience with all the different permutations of event-driven architecture, right? Like that's all we do. And that's all of our field does. And whether it's an account executive or solution engineer or solution architect in our professional services, all we do is talk about event-driven architecture, data streaming, and now like a couple of other things like Iceberg and Delta Table. But that's it. Like our scope is pretty narrow. But the benefit to that is if you have any event-driven architecture question, we've seen it 100 times. Right. And you're right. If you have a tech partner, if you trust them, they can help augment what is generally a small team. So I'm really glad that your decision to buy has yielded all of this benefit for you.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
I'm curious about the future. So what is the vision for data streaming at Busie? What does the future look like? And I know we have Confluent has some AI, has an AI accelerator. I'm curious if you're thinking about leveraging that program.
Yeah. So I will say that I'm in the camp that AI is going to be most effective when it uses real-time data. I think that that's pretty intuitive for me. So absolutely, we intend on leveraging those new functionalities that have been added. We actually built 3 proofs of concept during the AI accelerator, which wrapped up last week. Confluence for Startups AI Accelerator, which was awesome. By the way, I know you didn't ask about that, but great
No, I'm
program.
so glad. Please tell us all about it.
Yeah. So, I think it's the second year they're doing it, or the second cohort.
I think that's right.
Yeah, where they select a handful of companies and they show you the ropes to data streaming, but then also gave some deep dives into some of the newer features that have been released lately. So deep dive into Tableflow, deep dive into streaming agents. And then there are a bunch of other kind of like more businessy focused things. There were a few sales enablement conversations. I think there was one on building a deck for fundraising. All this whole program's created by the Confluent for Startups team and Tim Grashevsky, who absolutely killed it for us. And I've heard great things about the first cohort too. So if you're interested, anybody listening to this, definitely check it out. But at the end, throughout the 10 weeks, we were tasked with building some functionality on Confluent Cloud, using some of these new features, if applicable, to build an AI. Either it's your business, or for us, it was more of like value add features that we're going to be adding to our product. I can't talk too much about them right now because they're not live yet. And we don't want to give it too much away, but we're really excited about it. They're going to solve some really big pain points for our customers, and I think that's kind of what makes me most excited about it. So yes, AI is on the horizon, imminent.
Right. So to just make it generic, the vision is AI, probably agentic, powered by data streaming to alleviate the pain of your customers.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say we're never going to be really just like an AI first company. I don't think we have the right industry for that.
Sure. I agree with you.
But I do think that agentic AI is potentially going to prove to be most valuable in vertical SaaS, which is, we are a vertical SaaS company, because of the, I guess, dynamic nature of agentic software platforms. I think it's going to be super powerful in vertical SaaS specifically. And so we look at it through the lens of, we're going to build a platform that isn't necessarily centered around AI, but leverages AI to, again, solve those kind of pain points that maybe a rule-based software system is going to be difficult to build, right? So we can add these AI functionalities on top of that.
Right. You're building something that's not AI foundational, but it's AI compatible. And I think that is the right way to go. Because, I agree with you. Vertical SaaS is a great place for it. But I would even, postulate that, all industries have some type of dynamic business logic, dynamic data inputs. And that agentic AI is really the solution for that. Is that, as much as you want to schematize and standardize everything, and you do that as much as you can, there's always going to be corner cases that need that have a little bit of ambiguity. And I think that's the difference between a microservice and an agent, is an agent could actually handle that ambiguity. And I'm really excited to see where we go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Stay tuned. I'll keep you in the loop about the cool things that we're going to be building.
Please do. I'm already scheming, maybe like a year out, we could have our first ever like follow-up episode. We've never done that before.
That'd be cool. I'd be happy to
do that. Especially you get like 12 to 18 months of advancement, and it's like a totally new conversation. I would love to do that. So before we let you go, we're going to do a lightning round. Bite-sized questions, bite-sized answers. That is BYTE. They're like hot takes, but schema back and serialized. Brady, are you ready?
I'm ready.
What's something you hate about IT?
About IT. So I think there's still this like stigma or stereotype around the people in IT and that they're like recluse and antisocial. And that's kind of the opposite of what I found. I found that a lot of my peers are very easy to talk to, very fun to hang out with. So I guess it's not really about IT, but kind of about the people looking into IT and kind of what they think about it. So that's what I would say.
I think it's a generational thing for you guys. This is like me being an old man for a second, but
Yeah.
when I was growing up in the industry, there were a lot more IT curmudgeons. But I
Okay.
do think that is the stereotype that as the average engineer has gotten younger, has gone away. So
Fair.
I love it. I love personable engineers.
Yeah.
So what is your hot take on the future of AI?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think that we should be firing people
Okay.
maybe this is not a hot take, actually. That's probably not a hot take.
That's
But
okay.
I think I
It's a
still
good
I think
take.
we still have a ways to go, right? But and we
Yeah,
shouldn't be firing people. I think the companies that are firing people because they can replace their jobs with AI are gonna rue the day that they did that and will come to regret it. So
I think so
maybe
too.
not so much of a hot take, but yeah.
No, I think maybe not a hot take, but a very salient good take. What's a non-tech activity or hobby that's affected the way you think about data?
So gaming, which I guess is still kind of tech, but gaming
Yeah.
and like video games and sports. I think it's really cool how starting with sports, now you see all of these like analytics things and they're powered by AWS or whatever, and maybe it's a little gimmicky, but there's so much data in sports. There's so much data in gaming, and so when I was learning how to code, I would think about the games that I was playing and kind of like how they're capturing the data of whatever action that I'm taking in the video game. And then same thing with sports, like really cool to see all the data around that. So those are my
Yeah,
two.
I really like Thursday Night Football because it's like
Yeah.
on AWS and that like that post game and all the analysis. It's really interesting stuff. But a quick aside, what game are you playing right now?
So I mostly play first person shooters. So I
Okay,
play Rainbow Six Siege mostly, and then I
nice,
also play a lot of FIFA. I would say is kind of my go to
nice.
as well. So
I'm really into Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's
oh
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay, I'll check it out.
it's first person. It's not a shooter,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's you feel like Indiana Jones. They did an amazing job.
yeah.
Where are you getting outside inspiration from? Is it from a book or a thought leader?
Yeah, so I recently finished the book The Goal by, I'm gonna maybe butcher the name, Eliyahu Goldratt. Have you ever heard of
Close
this
enough.
book?
Yeah.
Yeah, so great book, like business novel. Really enjoyed that, and as a founder who, while I'm on the tech side, I have to wear many hats. I found that it was pretty eye opening to how we were running our business, and definitely was able to draw some insights from there. But then now I'm reading a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins, another kind of classic business book.
Yes, that one I've heard of.
Yeah, really liking it so far. I'm not so far into it yet. I just finished the other one. So those are kind of the two main sources of inspiration. I mean, I guess I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of different places and people, get inspiration from my team, from my family. So, but yeah, I'd say like book wise, those are kind of my go-tos right now. I also got a signed copy of Kai Werner's Ultimate Guide to Data Streaming, which I'm really
Nice.
excited to
I
dive
unpacked that
into.
book for him at Current.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah.
Oh, we must have met. We must have met in person.
Yeah, I was just like the towel guy in the background, just unpacking
Oh,
it while
gotcha.
Kai had that huge line.
Yeah.
But when we have a debrief, I want to tell Tim G he was the thought leader answer for that question. Just
Yes.
so you know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Tim
yeah.
G also.
It was Tim G. So Brady, any final thoughts or anything to plug?
Um, Connect with me on LinkedIn. I think it's Brady-Perry at the end of my URL. Want to shout out Tim G for real. This was actually part of my plan. Tim Grashevsky has been amazing. Raquel Sorensen, my AE, account executive, she's been awesome, super helpful. I think both of those people actually set up this conversation, so I'm really appreciative to them for that. And then I'll also shout out my friends Tim Wade and Saul Sparber. Tim Wade is one of the founders of Twin Labs. And then Saul Sparber, the founder of Agent Task Force. two guys I actually became friends with through Confluent, believe it or not,
No kidding.
through the Confluent for Startups program. Love those guys. They're great guys, great companies. Check out their companies. And yeah, I think that's all I got.
That is a very useful platform, or a very useful platform for a call out. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, Brady.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
thanks so much for joining me today. And for the audience, stick around because after this, I'm giving you my top 3 takeaways in 2 minutes. That was a great conversation with Brady. Here are my 3 top takeaways. So the first one's got to be this idea that Brady and his founder wanted to build this kayak for the group travel space. But when they started to peel back the layers and they started to reach out to the providers, they realized, wait, no one even has the software or the data to do this. So they pivoted and they said, you know what, instead of building the marketplace, let's build the market. And I think that's a really smart opportunity for a startup that said, hey, we saw this disparity, right, in the way we book group travel compared to anything else we're doing in our lives in, I guess this was 2020, 2021, 2022. And they saw this opportunity, said, let's seize this opportunity, realized that the opportunity was actually more foundational than that, and then built that on top of event-driven architecture, which will ultimately allow them to build that kayak service if they ever choose to go B2C. The other takeaway I really liked, and this is for any Confluent customer, but in particular for startups, do not be afraid to ask for help. If you were an early stage startup like Busie was, small team, right? Ask the experts for help. Help them, allow them to augment and supplement your workforce by one, spending the time to answer your questions or to give you that code snippet that's going to get you unblocked, and not have to chase around the answer. Again, our folks here at Confluent, this is all we do: event-driven architecture, data streaming, stream processing, etc. We have the answer, so do not be afraid to ask for the help. And then future thinking, my last takeaway is Brady's assertion that AI will be most effective when using real-time data. Well, I agree. Obviously, I'm a bit biased, but real-time data is the best data. And the only thing newer than real-time data is future data. And I joke about this a lot, but that is just not possible. Maybe with quantum computing, it will be. And the fact that he thinks that that is the right direction to go with real-time data, I love that he was able to Busie was able to be part of the Startups Accelerator. So they got exposed to Confluent Intelligence, which is our newest suite of features that make building agentic AI on top of streaming much easier. So I just think that this whole story of, kind of trying to build one business, pivoting to another, getting help from Confluent in various ways really accelerated the success of Busie, and I can't wait to see where they are in a year or a year and a half from now. That's it for this episode of Life is But a Stream. Thanks again to Brady for joining us, and thanks to you for tuning in. As always, we're brought to you by Confluent. The Confluent data stream platform is the data advantage every organization needs to innovate today and win tomorrow. Your unified platform to stream, connect, process, and govern your data starts at confluent.io. If you'd like to connect, find me on LinkedIn, tell a friend or coworker about us, and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time.